Welcome back to Kings of the North on this Wednesday. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. And I think we're going to be joined very soon by a special guest, Landis. We're rolling the true Kings of the North, who are the players and coaches who make all this college football happen, are getting hip to what's going on with the show, man. They're willing to be part of it.
Yeah, getting hip to it is one way, or maybe we're duping them into it. Either way, we like that they're willing to give us some of their time. No doubt about that.
Yeah, so we have a huge Indiana show planned today, and we know we have a huge Indiana interview, actually two huge Indiana interviews on the show. One is with Mike Katic, who is your friend and mine, Landis, and that interview has been done. Unfortunately, you were not able to be part of it, and I just want to say Mike Katic said hey to Landis. He missed you, man.
Oh, wow, that's really nice. I was bummed I couldn't do it, so I'm glad he remembered me.
Yeah. So we talked to him about what is happening with the 5-0 Hoosiers. He is a sixth-year offensive lineman. He's playing center this year for the first time. Interesting story of how he sort of wound up staying for this year and what's happening with the fan base and Curt Cignetti. We talked to him at Big Ten Media Days. He was one of the best interviews, one of the most fun interviews we've done here on Kings of the North. He'll be along later. And Taylor Lehman, who we know from him covering Ohio State previously. He also covered Indiana previously. Now he's like a very interesting person. He was a teacher for a little while, and then now he's getting his master's in data science at Indiana. And so he's following Indiana football. He has a newsletter on Substack, but he looks at it from a data perspective, Landis. We talked to him about what's happening with the Hoosiers and like how sustainable this might be. You think this is not, I don't think this is a flash in the pan 5-0. Even Curt Cignetti acknowledges the schedule has not been incredibly tough, but I don't think they're going anywhere. Are they?
No, I don't think so. I think there's some interesting discussion in there about how it becomes sustainable, but it's hard not to believe in that coaching staff given its track record, right? Like there's roster things I think we should probably talk about in this new world of college football and Indiana's viability, I guess, within that world. But from a program like culture standpoint, I think there is some longevity there with what Curt Cignetti has brought to Bloomington.
And I will say, we also have an interview that we did with the national sack leader. How about that, Landis? On KOTN, the national sack leader, Donovan Ezaraku of Boston College, who had 3 sacks in a comeback win against Western Kentucky on Saturday. But we have so much happening, we might not use that until Thursday. So we're not trying to tease you. I'm just telling you, we have like awesome players that we're talking to on the show, and we're trying to explore some other things. We're also going to explore what you're watching, what you eat, and what you're thinking at the end of this show, Landis, which the people always like. You were a little bit worried about maybe you haven't watched anything. Did you watch anything in the last 15 minutes that you can talk about?
No, I think I might do a music thing, which I've done before.
Oh, what you listening to? Yeah. Ears matter. Ears matter. So here's the thing. When it comes to Indiana, when we talk about the Hoosiers here, I think we want to talk about them in a way that is applicable to a lot of other teams. And are there lessons that can be learned here? And so primarily, I think that revolves around the hiring of Curt Cignetti. And we talked about this in the offseason. So many James Madison transfers joining him, so many staff members from JMU joining him. And we joked, I can't remember what we called it, jalapeno, mayonnaise, upside down poppers or something. We were creating a Kings of the North bar and grill menu and asking if there was such a thing as too much JMU. I 5-0 will do this to you, Landis. I really wondered if there was too much JMU. Actually, this might be a fantastic application of the transfer portal, which is take a team, keep the core of that team that you like the most, bring in the best of this other good team, and kind of smush teams together. You ever hear the story? I mean, you're a Pennsylvania born and bred guy, as am I. Remember, was it during the war? They had a team called the Steagles.
The Steagles, yeah.
What did they do? You know the story of the Steagles? They had to combine the Steelers and the Eagles for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know all the specifics, but it was that. Yeah, the Steelers and the Eagles combined to form one NFL team. Maybe it wasn't even the NFL at the time, but they were called the Steagles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and
a made up funny word. Like they are actually called the Steagles. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. Stuff happens. Should we call it's the James Madison Dukes, right? The James Madison Dukes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So should we call this team the Doosiers instead of the Hoosiers? Because
we'd be, though, if you recall our interview with Pat Narduzzi, we'd be infringing upon what they called what did they call? They called them Doosiers Bruisers. Yeah, well, they called his dad Doozer, and then the team was Doosiers Bruisers. Yeah. So
how about that? Who knew that we would enter a world on Northern football where there's too many Doosiers? Like there's a battle for the Doosiers that's going around. But do you think so? The application here, I was wondering if it was too much of an influx, right? Mm-hmm. But actually, where it feels like, I mean, no transfer portal thing is perfect, but as we're trying to, I think, gain lessons from the transfer portal, I think maybe there aren't any lessons. It's just like sometimes the players play pretty well and sometimes they don't play that well. But bringing multiple players from a previously winning team who are taking a leap up together. Now, if they're following their former head coach, that's very easy to do. But I almost wonder if that could be applied in a different way of if you are a team in the North and you said, we're going to go to whatever, Conference USA or some FCS level, and we're going to try to get maybe like 4 guys to come together and bring a winning culture and attitude, and then they have automatic friends. Like, could that be an actual coach? Like, if you're bringing the coach, of course. And I guess I will never question that again. Hey, why are you bringing so many of your former guys? It's like, well, we won there with them. We're going to try to win here with them. Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Could there be lessons applied here just from a portal perspective about bringing a clump of winning guys from a single team? I
think so. For what, like, I want to just make sure the record reflects it. I did not think Indiana was bringing too much JMU to the table. I will be on the right side of history there. Yes, I think because I think it's just I think I said this before, and I still don't want it to come off as me being like too mean to players maybe who aren't on teams that are great. But I do think there's something to bringing winning players into your program, or players who understand what it takes to win into your program. And it's not to say that guys on teams who have struggled aren't worth going after if they're super talented, because I think in a lot of cases they probably still are. But winning consistently in college football is pretty difficult. So if you, especially for like lower level programs where rosters turn over as much as they do once you get out of the top tier of college football. So if you can find a way to clump a group of guys together from a program that has a strong winning tradition and then bring them to your program to try to instill some of that, I do think that can be a winning recipe. I automatically no, like you can certainly run into some locker room chemistry issues with guys who have been in your program who think to themselves, like, what do you mean you're bringing these guys in to tell us how to win? I thought we were like building something here. So there's a fine line there, I think, but it's not a bad plan. And I guess maybe if you were able to do it, I would prefer something like that if it made sense over just really like pulling from all over the place. You bring in 23 transfers from 19 different programs kind of thing.
Right.
Like that can work too. Like we've seen that work, but I think
Florida State.
Florida State. It worked at Michigan State
a couple years ago.
Yeah. So I think you could do that as well. But this idea of, and this is maybe an extreme example of it with 13 transfers from the same school, but 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever from a good winning program, not a bad idea.
So the biggest lesson here is clearly Cignetti related, though. And Brett says, Brett's not a Hoosier fan. It's Hoosiers and Hoosiers only. No Hoosiers. We wouldn't do that to Indiana. We're not going to be like, oh, the only reason Indiana's good is because they copied JMU. That's not fair.
Sure.
I think we're done with any fan base ever questioning a hire of a winning coach from a smaller school or lower level. That are we just at the point where, hey, our team needs a new coach. Who should we get? How about this guy who won a whole lot before somewhere else, even though it maybe wasn't at a Big Ten or a power conference level. Because when you talk about Lance Leipold at Kansas, when you talk about Chris Kleiman at Kansas State, when you talk back in the day, Jim Tressel at Ohio State, you talk about Curt Cignetti at Indiana now.
PJ Fleck, maybe.
PJ Fleck,
this is
right?
maybe the best time to use him as an example, or certainly earlier in his tenure at Minnesota.
I mean, Matt Campbell from Toledo to Iowa State, right? I mean, the MAC pipeline, I think, had been there, especially for Northern schools. The idea of let's hire the best MAC coach is not unusual. Urban Meyer from Bowling Green to Utah. Now, it doesn't always work. Daryl Hazel from Kent State to Purdue didn't work, right? So it's not foolproof. But the MAC one is like, the MAC is almost right. I mean, that's kind of, there's such a connection to the Big Ten or to Northern schools in general. I think that made Jason Candle, Dan mentions, I think like people look at Jason Candle. Jason Candle was on the show, then his team lost the next week. So maybe like he's going to just stay away from us. Doesn't mean I'll stay away from jobs. Like, I think that makes sense. But I'm really thinking maybe more FCS, even like Lance Leipold had to go to Buffalo from Wisconsin Whitewater before he got the Kansas job. But are we at a point now where it's like, well, why just hire the Wisconsin Whitewater coach? Just hire the guy, hire the guys who have found ways to win without the recruiting, without the resources. They have a good culture and a good scheme. And I think the question with hiring those guys in the past has always been recruiting. Are you now going to be able to come up and recruit at this level? But especially in a portal world where high school recruiting is not do or die, if there are some regional ties or familiarity, I just don't know what would hold anybody back anymore. The Holy Cross coach just jumped to JMU to take over for Cignetti. Why isn't the Holy Cross? What's that guy's name? I apologize.
Bob
you know
Chesney.
His name. Why is Bob Chesney not going to be coaching one of our Northern teams in the next 3 years? Why would you not hire him if he's won?
I wanted Syracuse to hire him, and I'm not saying they should have hired him instead of Fran Brown, but like that's the guy that I thought would have been great for Syracuse, because it's a guy who if you can build a sustainable winning program at that level where it's just like really hard to do, like you don't have the same resources and your rosters get poached, and there's not all Americans hanging out in the transfer portal for you to go grab and add to your roster every year, right? It's just like, I think if you can win at that level, I'm not saying you can win anywhere, because I don't want to make it sound like it's easy at the FBS level, but I would trust that more than going out and hiring Shane Beamer, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm with you. Like I think fan bases should be pretty excited now about the prospect of hiring a coach with the profile of someone like Curt Cignetti, more than whoever coordinator du jour is, who people think is ready for a head coaching job. And yeah, sometimes that guy's going to be pretty good at his job, no doubt about it. But I'll take a winning track record. I don't care really what level it's at, over like upside from a coordinator who hasn't done the job before.
Because I will say, so the MAC pipeline that had existed previously in the North, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion in the past 5 to 10 years that with the way power conference schools are paying assistants now, you can make more money as a power conference assistant than you can make as a MAC head coach. And also it might be a better path for you in your career, because if you go to a MAC school that doesn't have resources and you can't recruit and you don't have facilities, you can sort of torpedo your career if you go to the wrong place. So we just saw, like, the Buffalo coach just went to be an assistant for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, right? Like, we see some of these guys leaving and not wanting to do that. So I think maybe the MAC pipeline, and listen, there's still good coaches there. Jason Candle's still sitting there. We understand that. But if that's not as fruitful as it once was, if there aren't Urban Meyers sitting there, these grinders who didn't get a MAC job, who weren't in the FCS grinders, is super interesting to me, because they are, and especially maybe if they're a little bit later in their career and they had sustained success at that level, I don't think they're turning jobs down. And Cignetti didn't jump straight from FCS to FBS. He was at James Madison. They transitioned from FCS to FBS while he was there. But Curt Cignetti, as good as he was,
but that was helpful though, wasn't it? You only think that was helpful for people to see that? Like, it wasn't, I think that could help with your projection if you say, well, he took them from the FCS to the FBS and they were pretty good right away. Maybe if we bring him from group of 5 to P5 or P4 now, that we can reasonably expect that he would find success because he's kind of done it already. He's done a version of that already.
I agree, but I also think that shouldn't be required anymore. So the thing that had happened before, it's like, so, and maybe it's the different profile that there had been. I mean, Urban Meyer is the perfect profile of like that. If you were a young, ambitious assistant, your path was position coach or coordinator, maybe at a Power 5 school, to MAC head coach, to higher level head coach. And I think a lot of those ambitious young assistants are cutting out the MAC head coach step because A, they feel like they don't need it. B, they're not sure they're going to win for sure, and it could actually set them back. And C, they'll make more money as an assistant and win more, and then they can jump straight to a job. Luke Fickell jumped straight from Ohio State to Cincinnati. He never had to go be a head coach in the MAC along the way. So I guess maybe it's less where you are, but the profile of the coach. So yeah, but also I would say, I would hope now people wouldn't require maybe an FBS jump. That if James Madison was still FCS, they still should have hired Cignetti. The couple of years on the FBS proved he could do it, but he was already proven he could do it at his other previous stops, right? At Elon, he was proving it.
Elon
so like,
and IUP, yeah.
So like that's one of those, and it's these guys who have just been working and working and working for it. And it's just different to hire a guy who's been a head coach for 20 years or 15 years versus a MAC head coach who was successful for 4 years and then was ready to jump. And it's not like I wouldn't hire those guys, but I felt like in the past, weren't those guys traditionally more attractive?
Mm-hmm.
Power 5 assistant, MAC head coach, you win, everybody's coming for you. And it didn't feel like it was as cool to hire the grinder who'd been winning for 2 decades at a lower level. And I think maybe that is officially over or should be over. So I think we would agree it should be over. Do you think it is over? Are ADs and fan bases ready to absolutely embrace the Cignetti hiring path?
I think more open to it. I don't know that it's definitely over because there's also there's not a Curt Cignetti every year, right? Like I think Bob Chesney leaving Holy Cross to go to JMU and maintaining success is now like a very hot commodity. I think he will be, but some of those coaches have.
Is there one? Like, is there one every year? And now it should be
Probably.
the battle
yeah.
for the FCS winner, and that there's going to be, everybody in the Power 4 who's maybe in the bottom half of the Power 4 are now fighting to hire the established FCS / lower level FBS winner. And that we're not surprised. It's that the next Curt Cignetti is choosing from 6 jobs.
I think probably, but there's also like, you can hold up Curt Cignetti on one hand and like Billy Napier on the other, right? So it's not like it's not a foolproof plan. Billy Napier was awesome at Louisiana and then got to Florida, and it turns out he's not that good, right? And there's extenuating circumstances there that are inherent to Florida that makes it kind of messy. But I don't think it's not a slam dunk to go hire that guy. I think people should be more open-minded to it, yes, and I think they will be more open-minded to it than they were previously. But I don't think it's like, screw a young up-and-coming coordinator. We're not going to do that anymore because Curt Cignetti has it rolling in Bloomington.
But Billy Napier was a head coach for 4 years and had previously been a high-level power conference assistant before he got hired by Florida. Curt Cignetti was a head coach for 13 years before he got hired by Indiana. So I think Billy Napier,
it's a different profile. Yeah.
I think it is. I think Billy Napier is actually that old profile. You're a Power 4 assistant. You take, Louisiana, it's like the MAC of the South, and now you jump to an SEC job. I mean, that's the old path, and it didn't work. That's not the Cignetti path. So like Jordan is mentioning guys like Kirby Smart and Ryan Day and Dan Lanning. So they were never head coaches at all. They went straight from Power 5 coordinator to gigantic head coach. So I'm not saying you should never hire the ambitious assistant. How do I say this? I think back in the day, Dan Lanning, Ryan Day, and Kirby Smart all would have been lower level head coaches before they became head coaches. But they didn't choose that path because there's more money and a better career path staying an assistant. So now I think there's two paths now. You've never been a head coach, or you've been a head coach for a long time and been grinding it out. And I think that old middle path, which was the most attractive path, which is the Urban Meyer, Billy Napier path, is not the first place to look anymore, when it used to be the absolute first place to look. They were fighting over Billy Napier down there, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like Curt Cignetti versus Billy Napier, I think is the case for Bob Chesney, is the case for I apologize for not knowing every head coach. Well, but here's the thing. The head coach at North Dakota State, because we talked about North Dakota State earlier this year, left to be an assistant for Lincoln Riley at USC because he wanted to try to move up. But he probably should have just gotten a head coaching job. Why did people not? He was the guy who had taken over for Kleiman. So anyway, I hope Steve Sarkisian, right? He's a guy, he got a head coach. There's no one path, but we can agree on hire more Curt Cignettis. Let's officially agree on that. That's the position of Kings of the North. Hire more Curt Cignettis. Is that official? That's our official KOTN. We are a now search firm advisory. Get more guys with that profile if you're looking for a head coach.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think even like you mentioned North Dakota State, like Craig Bohl's an interesting case study too. Like Craig Bohl left North Dakota State for Wyoming, was pretty good at Wyoming, and then retired. Should a larger profile program have taken a swing on someone like Craig Bohl, right? Because I'm sure that Wyoming wasn't the only program looking for a coach in that cycle. So I think you're right. I think that is our official stance. Like hire more Curt Cignettis. I wonder how much of that conversation do you think is based off of bringing someone from that level just generally, and how much of it is based on like age, I guess. Like Curt Cignetti was 62 when he got hired by Indiana. I think he's 63 now. That there aren't a lot of power programs out there that I think are looking to hire coaches in their 50s and 60s when they're trying to make a splash, even if those guys in their 50s and 60s are proven winners.
And that's another part of it, I think. Yeah. So when you say grinder, it takes time to grind.
Yeah.
If you've only been head coach for 5 years, you haven't been grinding. So there's an age part of this that I think comes along automatically if you're going to hire guys like that. And so I thought in this cycle, the difference between a hire like Fran Brown and a hire like Curt Cignetti was opposite ends of the spectrum and both really good swings. Right. That again, that Fran Brown had never been a head coach, but he's the kind of guy who's skipping a step, as a lot of those guys skip steps now. You didn't have to go be a lower level one. You got a power 4 job right away, and you are younger. You are coming from gigantic winning programs, and you have that profile. And then you have Cignetti. And I completely, as much as you said, you thought Syracuse should hire Bob Chesney, right?
Yeah. But
you completely understood why they hired Fran Brown, right?
Yeah, I do.
So I like both those swings, but I just feel like 10 years ago, a lot of people did not like the Cignetti swing. That's all. And I think we've progressed. And it's just like anything. People get wrapped up in age. It's just like with NFL quarterbacks. I feel like with NFL quarterbacks, all of a sudden NFL teams now like older guys who are more ready to play right away and have been around, and they're not so worried about, oh my gosh, well, if we have him for 10 years, he's going to be 35 in 10 years instead of 30. And it's like, why don't you worry about 2 years from now? So maybe just worry about now. It's like, oh, we want to hire a coach who's going to be here for 30 years. What are you talking about? How many coaches last 30 years anyway? Hire a 50-year-old. Maybe he'll be the head coach till he's 80. That's fine. We're there though. We're there. Right? We're there. Yeah. I'm just building my hot list. I'm trying to find guys who should be hired. So let's do this. Can you build your hot list? I have some news. The live interview that we were hoping to do and had set up is not going to happen. Okay. So that's okay. We will do it another time. We have other great interviews on this show. So what we're going to go to now is Mike Katic, one of our favorites, one of your favorites. He's going to join us to talk about what is happening at Indiana. And while he's doing that, Landis will assemble his hot list. So get ready.
Okay.
And now here's Mike Katic on Kings of the North. Joined now by, I think I can call you friend of the program, Mike. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Mike Katic, we talked to you at Big Ten Media Days. We freaking loved it. And we wanted to get you back on, and we'd be having you back on no matter what. But guess what, Mike? Your team is 5-0 for the first time since 1967. How cool is it to be an Indiana Hoosier right now?
It's really cool. And it's even cooler for someone like me who's been here for, this is my 6th year. So, being with this team through its ups and its downs, and now, seeing the way this team has responded this year, and with the new coach and all the new players that have joined this program, and just seeing what Coach Sig and this team is being able to do so far this year has been, it's the coolest thing ever, and it really warms my heart to be a Hoosier.
You started Indiana in 2019. You redshirted that year. Your first 2 seasons, Indiana's 14-7. 8-5 and 6-2, pretty good. Hey, we had the crazy COVID year, but Indiana's quite a good football team that year. You're playing as a redshirt freshman. 14-7 your first 2 years, 9-27 your next 3 years. At 5-0, the Hoosiers have already won more games this year than they did in any of the previous 3 seasons individually.
Yeah.
Does the air fill your lungs more? Does food taste better? Do you wake? I mean, like for real, you work the same. You work your butt off, win or lose. But how much better is life when you're winning?
Life's incredible when you're winning. Like you said, everything is just better. We go, the O-line and the boys, like we're out and about on campus, and like people are like recognizing who we are. They're like, and this has never happened in my whole career. I mean, there's this one picture that's been going around Twitter like crazy of me with my hands up. I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I mean, so people are like, they're really buying into Indiana football, and that makes everyone's life better. When all the boys get together and we go out and eat, people are recognizing us, and they love to just watch us sit down and eat food. It's really, a cool experience.
So I don't want to encourage anything, right? But I can't, like, I'm not one, but man, like, so I was like, if kids are going to be walking around with candy cigarettes and stuff, man, like there's a vibe though, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
Like it starts at the top, but it permeates. Like, what is the vibe? What's the identity? What's the feeling when Coach Siggs is doing this and the staff is doing this and the players who are grinding it out? Like, what are the Hoosiers all about right now?
I think we're playing with such a confidence and a swagger, and the momentum that we have right now. We're just steamrolling, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. And I think everyone can see what we do on game days, and we're 5-0 on paper, but no one really sees the amount of work we put in during the weeks and how high of a standard that Coach Sig holds us to. Yeah, during practice, during the week, and walkthroughs and meetings and film. So, there's this thing that we put on Saturdays on the field, but then, there's all that work we put in on the practice fields that, not everyone sees, but, it's showing up, and everyone's showing up and doing the work, and, it's paying off on Saturdays.
We know what Indiana basketball is. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
What do you think will it take? What can Indiana football be? Can you grab all those passionate fans who have been like diehard basketball fans for their whole lives, who maybe, they were there for Indiana football, but maybe it wasn't quite the same? Can you make Bloomington a football town, not instead of a basketball town, but in conjunction with the basketball town? Can Indiana football be that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think right now we're starting to see that there's like this overlap of, because there's always the diehard basketball fans, the diehard football fans. Now I'm starting to kind of see a little overlap where, even the basketball players, like I'm good friends with a lot of the basketball players and some of the coaches, and they're super invested in our practice, our games. They're always there at our games. And, they're attracting all the fans that come with them. And I think there's a great overlap that we have right now, but I think as the years go on and Coach Sig keeps building this, this momentum and this empire of Indiana football back up to where it needs to be, I think that's when we'll see that overlap even more. And then maybe you'll have some diehard basketball fans, become diehard football fans. And I think it's a beautiful thing that I'm starting to see, and I'm really, really, really excited for the future of Indiana football and the fans and the atmosphere.
So this is just PFF numbers, right? Career snaps for you. Do you want to take a guess? Do you know how many career snaps you've played in your 6 seasons?
Oh, geez. Maybe 5,000.
Oh, it probably feels like that. I got 2,912.
Oh, okay.
But that's a lot of ball,
like
brother. That's probably feels like 50,000. It's a lot of ball. So let me ask this question. And I know I'm not going to throw PFF grades in your face because I know what football players sometimes think of that stuff. But I got to tell you, man, I'm looking at the PFF grades for all the centers in the country. You're in the top 10. You're playing a very high level of ball. So let me ask this the right way. You've been a very good Big Ten football player for a long time. But did you get a lot better? What happened? What's going on, man? You're playing like a maniac.
I'm trying, I'm a humble guy. So every week I'm like, there's so many, I look at how I can get better. I don't really look at my good plays, or I don't really think I even have any good plays. That's kind of the way that I look at it. But
yeah,
I credit that a lot to Coach Bostad and what he's been able to do with our O-line room. And me personally, I love my previous O-line coaches. But there's been this huge jump I've taken last year and then into this year, with playing guard last year and center this year. I think, my maturity has really helped me progress in my game and my knowledge of defenses and coverages and personnel packages that, and Coach Bostad does a really good job of getting us ready. But then again, it's just me watching the film and seeing plays that I, have busted assignments, or I don't finish my blocks. And those are the plays that really haunt me. And those ones that, I really try to get better at, in practice the next week.
You and Curtis Rourke have played a lot of ball. I always love when you got a smart center and a smart quarterback and you can do stuff together. What is that relationship like? And how much does it help the offense when you have veterans like you and Curtis kind of running the show at center and QB?
Yeah, our relationship has progressed a lot in these past 5 weeks. We were, centers and quarterbacks have kind of a unique relationship. I think we're a lot closer than he is, with, the other O linemen, just because we take all those snaps together. But I think in these last 5 weeks, when players and teams go through adversity, that's when, you get really close. And, we've had some adversity, especially this past week. And it's just, keeping each other up, keeping each other, looking forward to the next play. And that's what he, credit to him and his maturity. He's played a lot of football, so he knows how to deal with adversity. Unfortunately, when you throw 2 interceptions, you have to get back up on the horse and keep chugging, man. And he did a great job this past week. And I think the O-line did a great job. He got sacked a couple of times, but I think we did a good job of keeping him upright in critical scenarios.
Yep.
So he can make those big plays. And, it's credit to him and his knowledge of the game and his maturity of the game. But, our relationship's really tight right now, and I'm really looking forward to building it as the season goes on.
I thought that was so important for you guys because through the first 4, nobody plays a perfect game, but you just had sort of been overwhelming opponents, and you just had really been making very few mistakes. And then you get into the Maryland game. Maryland has a good defense, and you do make some mistakes. You're not perfect anymore, but you still find a way to win. But you bounce back from that. I was almost excited to see the imperfect Indiana.
Yeah.
Because at some point, something's going to go wrong. And then what? Well, now we know something went wrong. And then what was you guys still find a way and play great football after that? Were you, not that you want to see mistakes, but that's a different situation, right?
Absolutely. And I get what you're saying. And I felt the same way. We didn't really have a chance to see how our offense responds to certain scenarios, certain adversity. Like we didn't have a turnover in the first 4 games. So, you hate to see a turnover, you hate to see an interception, but being able to see how our defense responded to our turnovers. I mean, we let up no points off of turnovers. And then our offense being able to go out there and flushing all that behind us and still putting up 42 points in a Big Ten conference game, or 48, or what do we score? 48 or 42?
We scored 42 against
42. I don't even know anymore, but because I'm already moving on to the next week. But no, it's really cool to see how our offense and defense responded, to that adversity. And it's credit to Coach Sig and the whole coaching staff for keeping this mission focused and just getting ready to roll.
So you're so experienced, but everybody on the offensive line, you're so connected to the guys next to you. Bray Lynch and Drew Evans had barely played coming into this year. And unfortunately, Nick Kidwell, who was in that guard competition, got hurt in the preseason. What's it been like for you with 2,900 career snaps, with being surrounded by 2 guards who this is all new to them? Are you their papa on the field? Like, this is, what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Well, funny story. We were getting ready to go out onto the field, like the center quarterback exchange. We were ready to go out early onto the field against FIU. And I looked to Drew and I'm like, so like, are you ready to go, man? And he's like, dude, this is my first time ever touching a game field in my life. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is my 38th, 39th start and you haven't even touched the field. And I'm like, all right, like, let's go, man. Like, it's time to, grow up. Like, you're going to have this is big now. And then the same way with Bray. Bray's played a little bit here and there, but he's never had a start. So, I kind of took that challenge under my wing and I kind of embraced that challenge. I knew what we were getting with tackles, Carter and Trey. Like, they're really good players. Yeah. And Drew and Bray did a great job in fall camp, but they were competing a lot. So, and then, they come out and are having a great season and, they're really coming into their own bodies and knowing how I play and knowing how their tackles play. Cause, offensive line, like you're either in a combination with your tackle or your center or vice versa. Yeah. So just knowing how each other play is such a big part of it and just gelling with your guys. And that, I think that starts off the field and, just getting the guys together as much as you can and getting close with one another and having those tough conversations and, going out to eat with each other. And I think this is the closest O-line room that I've ever been a part of. And I think it really reflects well onto the field.
When you guys go out to eat, who eats the most? Do you eat the most?
No, surprisingly not. I think Vinny Fiacable, he got dinged up this past year, but he eats like a maniac. Respect. I mean, everyone, like it's pretty crazy how much we can put down.
Yeah. You guys are going to Northwestern this week. Northwestern has like the crazy little lakeside stadium. Like, are you curious about that, to play in a 15,000 seat stadium? Do you think it's going to be weird? Could it throw you off? Is it cool? Does it not matter? It's still a 100-yard field. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, it's another game. It's a business trip for us. It's, we're playing a Big Ten opponent. It may be a little smaller of a stadium, but I think, it is what it is. We're going to go in there with the same mindset that we did against UCLA, going on the road. Yeah. So I think that's my mindset right now. It's just another business trip for the guys and for the team.
Okay. So you end up coming back for year 6. Bob Bostad is the only assistant coach retained from last year's staff. If we hadn't had the whole COVID thing, you'd be out of eligibility. Yeah. So if your position coach hadn't stuck around and, if we didn't have a worldwide pandemic, you'd be off in the NFL or doing something else right now. Like, there's a lot of ways that Mike Katic is not part of the 2024 Hoosiers. What do you feel? Is there something working here? Like, if Bostad wasn't part of the staff, would you have stayed or would you have gone?
I asked myself that question. I'm not sure because I mean, when everyone got fired, I was like out the door, like, because even before last year, like at the beginning of my 5th year, I was like, this is it. Like, I'm done.
Okay.
I've given a lot to this university. The university has given me a lot. I've started a lot of games. I've made a lot of relationships, but, I think I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
So I think, and then, the opportunity came to come back, but I think that would have been it after that.
Yeah.
I think, it's crazy how, life has its own plan for you, and here I am, and I'm very grateful I'm here. And every day I wake up blessed that, I made the decision to come back, and I had a support system that supported me coming back. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Here we are.
Yeah.
All right, last thing. So don't tell anybody this, because sometimes I say stuff like this and I get people in trouble, and it's not my intent. I'm only telling you this because you're my guy. So listen, we did our new playoff brackets the other day on the show, and I have Indiana in the playoff. Just so you know, I had Indiana in the playoff.
There we go. I love to hear it.
I'm just saying you're playing good ball. I mean, like what else are you going to go by?
I mean,
playing good ball.
The Hoosiers are rolling. It's just simple.
The Hoosiers are rolling.
Yeah.
Hoosiers are rolling. Hoosiers are rolling.
Big's
That's all
rolling.
we got to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things you put in the work, and you can only control what you can control. But the idea, Mike, that you've been here for this long and you get to be a part, help lead what's happening in the Indiana football right now. My gosh, man, that's what it's all about.
And I'm just blessed I can do this, and blessed to have such a great team and players and O-line around me. And it's just I'm one of the happiest I've ever been in my life right now. It's
awesome.
5-0, and
awesome.
We get another opportunity on Saturday.
Football should make people happy, man. And you guys are making a lot of people in Indiana happy right now. Mike Katic, will not be the last time we have you here on KOTN, but we're always so grateful for your time on Kings of the North. Thanks, brother.
Thank you for having me.
You're so sad. How sad are you, Landis?
I'm pretty bummed. I cannot pull for a Mike Katic about that.
Come on. It's like we want to talk to Mike Katic anyway, and it's like, oh, I hope we have reason to talk to him. Then his team went 5-0. So we talked about this a decent amount on the Tuesday show when we did our playoff picks, but I'm thinking maybe I'm going to be in Bloomington. Am I going to be in Bloomington? Am I going to be in Bloomington on November 9th for Michigan at Indiana?
Oh, yeah.
I think maybe I will be.
I think you have to be, because what's Indiana have before then?
So Indiana's schedule, they are at Northwestern this week, then they're off, then home Nebraska, home Washington, at Michigan State, and then home Michigan, and then at Ohio State. So Michigan, Ohio State back-to-back. But, I mean, it's kiss of death, as you said, every time we talk about a team and then they lose. Because that's how, and it's one of those things, people talk about like the Sports Illustrated jinx back in the day and that kind of thing. It's actually just how it works, because you talk about a team when they're doing well, and it is not typical to win forever. So the idea that like, hey, you lost right after we talked about you, is like, yeah, because if you were losing before, we wouldn't have talked about you. So then you were winning, we talked about you, and then probably you're going to lose eventually. So I don't know that Indiana is going to be undefeated going into that, but they're playing good ball, right? That's indisputable.
They're playing great ball, and they could definitely be undefeated going into that. They might drop a game here or there. It's going to be a huge day in Bloomington, I think, regardless of what Indiana does between now and then. So you should definitely go to that game.
Okay. Did you make a hot list? It was like a 17-minute interview.
I don't have a list. I got a guy, though.
You got a hot guy?
I got a guy.
We love hot guys. We love hot guys.
Yeah.
Come on, man. We love hot guys on Kings of the North. Who's your guy?
The problem, like a lot of the guys who are currently coaching the best FCS programs are pretty young and pretty early into it. So I think there's a lot of guys who people are quite high on, including Jason Eck at Idaho, who's a former Wisconsin offensive lineman who I think's got some juice, and I'm curious to see where that takes him. But I think this is only his second year as a head coach at Idaho. And a lot of the other like North Dakota, the Dakota schools and Montana States like have some younger coaches. So here's my guy. But I have a question for you, because I want to know how this might hit you. When were you working in Wilmington?
In Wilmington, Delaware? I worked in Wilmington, Delaware from 1998 until 2005.
Okay. So here's the guy. It's Casey Keeler.
It is Casey Keeler. Are you serious? Yeah. He's a perfect, I mean, I didn't do a ton of Delaware football back then, but Tubby Raymond had been the legendary 300 win coach of the Delaware Blue Hens. He brought the Michigan-style helmets to Delaware. Tubby Raymond was the Bo Schembechler, the Woody Hayes of the everything of Delaware football. And you know this. You know the Tubby Raymond trivia fact. Do you know the Tubby Raymond trivia fact?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
Are you ready for this? Now we're doing like a half Indiana show, half Philly show. Hold on to your butts, Landis. Tubby Raymond's son, Tubby Raymond, the great Delaware coach, his son Dave was the first Philly fanatic.
Oh, I did not. I know who Dave Raymond is. Yeah, I didn't know
That's
that was
Tubby Raymond's son.
I had no idea.
It's arguably the greatest sports family in American history.
Wow.
The dad has 300 wins, and the son is the Philly fanatic. And he wasn't just the first fanatic; he was the fanatic. 30 years. He was the guy in the fanatic costume.
He wasn't the fanatic. He was the fanatic's best friend, because the fanatic is his own being.
Look at you.
Don't ruin my childhood.
I'm sorry. So there's that.
Can I tell a quick story about that? When I was so there's like the guy
story. Let me look for my
there's
fanatic.
There's a guy who plays the Philly fanatic like at the games, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a secondary Philly fanatic who will also like at times dress as like the fanatic's mom when it's the fanatic's birthday or whatever. That guy, when I was a kid, was like best friends with my uncle. So, but like I didn't know because I was a kid. Like he didn't tell me. I didn't know anything. But one day we were like over his house and I saw the fanatic's head in his garage. And it was like the most traumatizing thing that ever happened to me. And then they had to explain to young Bill Landis as a child that no, the Philly fanatic and his mother Phyllis, who's a lovely lady, were not actually real beings. They were people in costumes.
You thought your uncle's friend killed and beheaded the fanatic?
Beheaded the fanatic and then kept it as a trophy in his garage.
Wow, that's a lot of fanatic talk, but it's good.
Yeah.
The Philly fanatic is the best mascot in sports.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So Tubby Raymond retired and they hired Casey Keeler. And by the way, it's not Casey, it's KC. I just like Casey. So people know C Keeler. And so he was really good, but then he got fired. Like it kind of went a little bit south at the end of Delaware. And what's he at now? Stephen F. Austin? Where is he?
So Casey Keeler, here's the resume. He's 65 years old.
65. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
He is from Pennsylvania. He is a former University of Delaware linebacker. Head coach at Rowan University, Division III. Awesome. Won the multiple national championships. Head coach at Delaware. Pretty good for most of his tenure there. Won a national championship, played for 2 others. Went to Sam Houston State. Took a year. He got fired after the 2012 season. Went to Sam Houston State in 2014. At that time, also an FCS/1AA program.
Okay.
Was good there. Won the national title at Sam Houston State during the COVID year. So that was like the spring FCS national title. He won that. And he is still the head coach of Sam Houston State, which has now moved up to the FBS level. It is in Conference USA. They were 3-9 last year, but right now they're 4-1 and just beat Texas State, which is like a huge win for that program. It's like a local rivalry, and Sam Houston State won it. So he's got a winning track record at the Division III level, the FCS level, and now he is running a program with a winning record, at least at the FBS level.
Wow. Okay. That is pretty interesting. 65 is pushing it on our theory of that, right? That you're going to hire a 65-year-old head coach.
Yeah.
But I really like it. And he's of the North. He's coaching in Texas now, but he's from Pennsylvania. He played at Delaware. He coached in New Jersey. He coached at Delaware. He's of the North. Great find. Put him on the radar. I was supposed to cover that Delaware national championship game in 2003. In December of 2003, it was I'm trying to think where that game was. It was somewhere in the South.
They play it in Frisco now. Were they playing it there then?
They played it in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
And my wife was 8 months pregnant with our first child. And I said, I'm not going to Tennessee while my wife is 8 months pregnant. And my boss was actually kind of mad. I would have been like the third guy there. I would have written like the second sidebar on that game. But then my daughter, who is now almost 21, was born on January 17th. So like it wouldn't have been close, but I was like, I'm not going. So I missed Casey Keeler's national championship, but now it could come back around when we can have him on Kings of the North, because we're gonna reach out to Sam Houston State, and say, hey, Sam Houston State, Bill Landis thinks your head coach is a hot guy. Can he come on our Northern show?
That's right. That's right.
And it's weird to me that he's 65 because when he got hired at Delaware, Tubby Raymond was like an old man with gray hair and like was a grand old man of college football. And Casey Keeler, if you Google Casey Keeler right now, he's always wearing sunglasses. And it was like, is Casey Keeler the coolest person ever born? He wears sunglasses at night and he's the head coach at the University of Delaware. And now you're like, he's 65. And I would have guessed he's 37. But the problem is I'm almost 65.
You're also old. Yeah.
I also
that was not that was pre Flacco, I guess, right?
So Flacco.
Oh, this is interesting. Do you know I'm looking at the 2003 Delaware football team because their backup quarterback at the time, Ryan Carty, is the current head coach at Delaware. Do you know who were assistants on that staff?
Who?
Curt Cignetti.
Okay. Yep. I did know that.
Kyle Flood was also.
I did know that. Yeah. I mean, like the guy who was the guy who I worked with was the longtime beat writer there and is a tremendous sports writer and a great writer there. So like I was around when I got the job covering Ohio State, I asked him like how to cover college football. Kevin Tressolini, look him up. Great dude. So I was down around and I can remember. So Flacco was there. They did a good job. Now we're doing Delaware football. We're doing Indiana
the Blue Hens
football.
are of the North.
The Blue Hens are of the North, but they had gotten Joe Flacco, like didn't win the job at Pitt and transferred to Delaware. And it was around that time. And then the big thing was Andy Hall was their quarterback and the Eagles drafted him. And it was like they were trying to ride, like the Eagles kept drafting people and trying to develop quarterbacks. And it was like, it didn't quite work with Andy Hall. So anyway, Casey Keeler is a great name. We will keep it in mind. And we are now going to take a little break, but we are not done talking about Indiana. We also not done. We're going to do what you're watching, what you eat, and what you're thinking at the end. But when we come back from this break, we are going to bring in Taylor Lehman to sort of make the case for what is real about this Indiana team so far and give sort of his perspective on how Indiana fans are vibing with the Hoosiers. You can get ready for that after the break on KOTN. Joined now by Taylor Lehman of Bite-Sized Bison on Substack. And for the uneducated, Taylor, you are writing from a data perspective most of the time about the Indiana Hoosiers. So why is the name Bison part of your Substack?
Yeah, the mascot for Indiana used to be a bison decades ago, and they stopped doing it, and now they don't really have a mascot. And so sometimes people are like, oh, the mascot is all the Hoosiers, everybody here. And it's like, no, we need a mascot. But so there's kind of a movement about bringing back the bison. And so if you're in any sort of like Indiana internet circle, you're probably going to see bison everywhere you are. And so that's kind of a nod to that.
Wonderful. Okay. So if people, so again, this is a very interesting way to analyze a specific team. You also do some stuff with the Big Ten. If people finish this conversation and think, my goodness, that is a smart young man, I would like to consume his content. How can people find you and find your Substack?
Yeah. So the link is bitesizedbison.substack.com. You could also go to Google and just search Bite-Sized Bison. I promise you there's nothing else named that out there. So you'll find it there. There is a free version. I provide some content for free, but it is mostly Indiana focused, but there is one every week called The Recap, and there's quite a bit of Big Ten content in there through the lens of Indiana. I'm definitely writing to an Indiana crowd, but some folks are very interested in the Big Ten information as well.
Okay. Would you eat a bison burger?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about that one. I'd really have to. Oh, I don't know. I think I would be interested up until it came up in front of me, and I'd be like, I don't know. I need to think about this.
Yeah. I had one time. I mean, a bison is a lovely, majestic animal, also delicious. And when I hear Bite-Sized Bison, it's either data chunks about Indiana football, or it is like delicious boneless bison nuggets that also could be really good. So just think about that in case you encounter that. That also could be, you could open a data science / sports bar where you serve data and delicious chunks of meat. So consider that.
I need you to do some marketing for me, Doug. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love combining data science and fast casual food. It's what I'm here for. You're serving an Indiana audience. How jacked is your Indiana football audience right now after a 5-0 start?
It's interesting. They are cautiously jacked. You know, it wasn't that long ago when Indiana was in the top 10, and so in 2020. True. So there's a lot of that. A lot of people up until this week when they beat Maryland, they were really waiting for the other shoe to drop and for that, you know, inevitable fall to happen. I think Indiana still needs to beat one of the bigger brands for the fan base to really be sold, but the Memorial Stadium was pretty packed in the rain for the Maryland game. I think folks are very excited, definitely more than usual. But there definitely are quite a few who you would be like, well, why aren't you excited about your football team? And it's because, well, Indiana, you know, is the losingest program in college football history. So it's going to take a minute. But overall, they are very jacked.
We are not much for cautious optimism on this show. We're kind of for cannonball optimism. So I am shocked to hear that people aren't all in, but I guess I get it. But I would say to anybody who's like, well, we've been here before. They finished in the top 10 with Tom Allen and Michael Penix and COVID. And the thing I would say about that are these three things potentially factual about why this is not that. A, we are not in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. That's a fact. Right?
That's a fact. Yep.
B, being excited about a Michael Penix team was correct. So being excited about that Indiana team, I don't think should make you fearful because you were onto something. It just took him going to Washington for it to fully flower, but the bud was there in Bloomington. So don't be scared away by that, right? That's a fact. He was good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
He was very good. He struggled to stay healthy. That was the issue.
Yes. And maybe there's an alternate universe where what happened at Washington happens at Indiana with a couple different coaching things. Like, is that impossible? Did Michael Penix have to leave Washington to flourish in your mind? Or is there, if he stays healthy and maybe there's a couple other things that happen that could have happened at Indiana?
I think he had to go to Washington. I think it could have happened at Indiana. This is actually a conversation folks have all the time is, you know, what would have happened if he stayed? And it was, well, Indiana was pretty committed to Tom Allen after the 2019 season. And the offensive line was the writing was on the wall for how terrible it was going to be in the near future, and that there just wasn't any change happening. And so I think he did have to leave. And Kalen DeBoer, I think, saw something similar, and that's why he took that job at Fresno State too after 2019.
Okay. C, top to bottom, as a program builder, culture creator, everything that goes into being a head coach, Curt Cignetti is probably better than Tom Allen. Is that also a fact in your mind?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So Tom Allen had the great halftime speeches or post-game speeches, right? When it was in 2020 and people were jumping around in the Indiana locker room and Tom Allen was yelling, it felt like this is awesome. But I do think you can look back and see what was real and what wasn't from 2020. And I think you can come to the conclusion that this feels much more real. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I will say, Tom Allen's a great defensive coordinator. And I think he's going to be pretty good at Penn State. But the head coaching responsibilities, I think, were maybe a little bit out of his depth at times, and especially with the changing landscape of college football. I think Curt Cignetti has taken a bit more of a measured approach and leaned on a lot of experience that Tom Allen didn't come in with. And when it comes to building a staff, Cignetti brought in staff that he had at James Madison, he had even before James Madison, is kind of a system that they hired instead of just a coach. And we're seeing right now that there's not a ton of high-end talent that there has been for previous Indiana teams to be good, like a Mike Penix or a Tevin Coleman or Jordan Howard before, or even a Micah McFadden. There isn't a ton of that high-end talent as a system. And I think that's the difference between previous successful teams and this team that seems to be looking fairly successful right now. And I think that's also why it's hard for fans to jump onto. But yes, I will say, yes, the Cignetti difference is there.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you something that I would like you to take to your bite-sized Bison audience. I have Indiana in the playoff right now. They're my 11th seed in my updated bracket. Does that make you, as a man of science, want to get off of this show because that seems like a crazy thing to do? Or are there parts of this that, as you analyze this, as someone who knows Indiana football but also gets inside the numbers, that you can see a light at the end of the tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel says 10-2, or maybe even 11-1? Like, does that seem possible?
Yeah, absolutely. There, even just a couple weeks ago, I was, kind of facetiously text one of my friends who does some fan media here, and I was like, the ceiling is 11 wins, because I came in thinking 8 wins, but 11 wins I did not think, but the way that they have come out, especially offensively, when you look at the success rates, they're number 1 in passing and number 10 in rushing. And that's, I think it's primarily the success of the offensive line. That's been an insane improvement from last year, but definitely 2 years ago. And I don't think it's crazy. I think, especially with the schedule they have, it's not a cupcake schedule, but it's definitely not the schedules they faced previously. I think there are some teams that are a bit more difficult than people anticipated them being. I'm looking at Washington right now. I'm not sure exactly how good they are, but it seems like they're okay. But Michigan seems vulnerable, and that's a team that I thought going into the season that of the bigger brands, that's a beatable team. And I think with the just thinking about Michigan being a bit of a beatable team for Indiana, I mean, we're kind of in some uncharted territory here. Indiana's only been 5-0 3 times, including this season, in their program history. And so, it's hard, especially for fans, to know how to react to something like that. You're not necessarily, especially after how bad the last 3 seasons have been, to think that this season could be historic in a year 1. And when you look at I was trying to temper expectations, because everybody was very excited when Curt Cignetti was hired, and I was trying to hedge some things before the season began. I was like, year 1, that is a very difficult year to succeed, even though Cignetti said that he was going to win in year 1. I kind of looked at the historical data for SP Plus, and I was like, how many coaches have won at Indiana in year 1? And there have been, Tom Allen saw some improvement in year 1, and in 2017, Jerry DiNardo, Terry Hepner, those guys had some improvement. But usually it's very bad. Usually year 1 is not good for Indiana teams. But right now, the percentage change in SP Plus in Curt Cignetti's first year is higher than it's ever been by 13%. It's been the first year for Curt Cignetti has been unlike. It exceeds expectations for anything that Indiana fans have seen in their lifetimes. And so I don't think that you're out of bounds for saying that. I think that there is a possibility that they do get to that 11-win mark. My thought is that there are always those games, especially in a first year of a regime, where they drop it. They should have won it. It's a winnable game, and they, for whatever reason, they lose it. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. But if I don't believe that, 11 wins makes sense to me.
The thing that really works out for them, so it's 5 home games, 4 road games in the Big Ten. They've already won at UCLA. And then 2 of the other road games are just, I think, obviously quite winnable, at Northwestern and at Michigan State. And then the toss-up games are kind of at home. Nebraska, Washington, and Michigan. So the schedule really lends itself to this. When you and when you do the Big Ten data like this, are there things when you look at Indiana compared to Michigan that the numbers so far give you even more of an indication that Indiana has a chance to really compete in that game? Because that's the pivot game. There's, if they go beat Ohio State, then just set the whole town on fire, right? That's a different discussion. But Michigan is the pivot between 10-2 and 11-1, between having a potentially top 10, top 15 win and maybe not having any of those. Do the numbers say that Indiana so far is a competitive team with Michigan?
Yeah. When I look at Michigan, I look at the Indiana offense, Michigan defense matchup. The Indiana offense it's just been so good, their two conference games are against Maryland and UCLA. UCLA is maybe underperforming some expectations. It's been, personally for me, I thought they would be a little bit better, but Maryland's defense, their front was pretty stout, and so when I look at the trenches, like the data in the trenches, Indiana right now, it's not necessarily data, but PFF grades, they have the third average grade on their offensive line. And Mike Katic is playing out of his mind at center too. He's like a top 5 center in the FBS right now. And so I see that, and I see how well their scheme is offensively along the offensive line. Michigan defensively has not been as strong as they were recently. I think that is where Indiana can take advantage. But which is so unusual. It's so unusual for Indiana to have some sort of an advantage and on the line. But that's also where their defense thrives too. I mean, they paid a lot of money, and that's another thing about Indiana too. They increased their investment in the football program this offseason when they hired Curt Cignetti. And one of those increased investments was they put $1 million more into the assistant salary pool. And with that $1 million, they hired a second defensive line coach. They had Pat Kuntz from JMU, and he's doing the interior, and Buda Williams from Colorado State is doing the defensive ends. And they both had top 5 sacks producers last season. And so, you're seeing an improvement. Linnell Carr was like somewhere in the 30s in the Big Ten last year in pass rush production. Now he's top 5, and Mikhail Kamara looks really effective. So where they really tried to bolster this program was in the trenches, and I actually think that is an advantage for Indiana when it comes to Michigan. But I think defensively, Indiana's going to try to cause havoc with his defensive line. They're 4th in the conference in defensive line havoc rate. And then, like I just said, they're graded 3rd as an offensive line. So that's the focus for Indiana. And then obviously you have the scheme with the passing attack. But it's kind of crazy to say. Yeah.
Do you know? I don't know if you can check. I don't know if you can check this with the data science. But do you believe there has been an increase in smoking and or children consuming candy cigarettes? Thanks to Curt Cignetti. Do you see children walking the streets of Bloomington where you live eating candy cigarettes?
No. Okay, I'll say no. But Indiana, the first game of the season, they had a shirt that had a print on it that was using the branding, the vague branding of Marlboro, and instead of Marlboro, with the red, instead of Marlboro, it said Cignetti. And they passed those out. Like everybody in the student section had a shirt that said that, and some recruits put out a picture on social media. And 2 of them, these guys aren't even 18 yet, and 2 of them have a shirt that is in the spirit of Marlboro for Cignetti. But yes, it's a real thing.
So extra large. I'm an extra large if you come across one. But I also might have to make my way to Bloomington for one of these games to take in what the Hoosiers are doing. Man, isn't it fun? Rutgers, Illinois, Boston College, BYU, Indiana. There are some teams and fan bases that normally don't get to celebrate like this, who are having awesome college football seasons. And Bloomington is alive, is it not? Can you just feel it? Are people happier walking down the street when you're going to your science class?
Yeah. No, for real. It's a real thing. You know, I think Indiana's always going to be battling the basketball versus football thing when it comes to the football program. But I you know, there are people who are turning out that weren't before. I have some subscribers for Bite Size Bison that said I'm going to my first game since 2021. Which when you were talking about the pandemic, that's, you know, 2020 there were no fans. Sure. So 2021 started and everybody was really amped for that season, that Cincinnati game in particular at the beginning of the season. And that didn't work out. They ended up winning 2 games in 2021 and it kind of like lost all momentum. So what Cignetti has done is actually very impressive. So you're kind of starting from zero again. But yeah, no, absolutely. There are people who are going back to Memorial Stadium and they always say pack the rock. And, you know, it's like there are some very zealous fans who are amped and I kind of downplayed that earlier, but there are some who are very amped.
Good. They should be. Tell them to get more amped. Don't start smoking. If you don't already smoke, don't start smoking, but get excited about Indiana football. He is Taylor Lehman. You can find his work on Substack, where he cooks up delicious bison nuggets. No, bite-sized bison with Taylor Lehman. So Taylor, thank you for sharing some of your Indiana data science and Hoosier knowledge here on Kings of the North.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
71 minutes on Indiana football, good enough? You good on that?
I'm this close to taking up smoking. I just want to say.
I think I'm done with that bit. I'm getting worried that I am influencing
Why?
young people.
They're leading into it. Why? You can't get mad about it. I'm good upset about it.
I'm not done. Any other national shows doing 72 minutes on Indiana football today? Do you know that?
No shot. There are national shows who think I think begrudgingly giving Indiana 5 minutes. You know? Yeah.
So I like going in right. The middle is boring. You've got to go deep or be way up above. So sometimes we're up in the clouds and we're looking at all 28 teams at the same time, and sometimes we're down in the weeds with Mike Katic crawling around in Bloomington going 5-0. So we will have Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College on the Thursday show with the Thursday picks. Do you have anything else to say about Indiana football, Landis?
I think they're going to be unbeaten when they play Michigan. That's it.
My goodness. Okay. It's not the last time. We're not going to now not talk about Indiana for a month, but we think we gave you a good baseline of what you need to know about the Hoosiers right now, which means we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll do What You Watching, What You Eating, What You Thinking on Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis back on KOTN. You can subscribe, give us a thumb. What does it actually mean? I always say give us a thumb. What is it? You like us? What do? You click the thumb, right?
Yeah,
you like it.
Give us
so like it.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. That's what normal people say. Don't give the thumb. We've seen some good reviews on the Apple Podcast feed. We appreciate that. So just thanks everybody for being here. We like to change it up. We kind of don't want you to know exactly what we're going to talk about. We would like you to assume that it's going to be interesting Northern college football talk that you probably won't find anywhere else. And so if you come, we're going to try to bring you that energy. And so hopefully you can come to the show with that energy, and more often than not get rewarded. What's like a good hit rate, Landis, on a good show? 60%? 80%? What are we aiming for here? There's going to be a couple duds. Come on.
30% gets you in the Hall of Fame, man. So I think we're good with that.
Hey, yeah. Where are you on the Hit King, by the way? Passing of the Hit King. Pete Rose passed away.
Yeah, I didn't. Pete Rose played in Philly like way before I was born, but I held an affinity for the man because of his place in Philadelphia sports lore.
I did attend a World Series game in 1983. when the Phillies were in the World Series, and he was the first baseman for those Phillies. Can I tell? We're getting into what you're watching, what you eating, what you're thinking. This is not my what you're thinking, but I'm reminding myself of this. So I think people know Landis grew up in Philly. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, 2 hours from Philadelphia. I worked in Wilmington, Delaware for 8 years, which is just outside Philadelphia, and I covered Philadelphia sports when I was there, including being a beat writer for the Phillies for 4 years. Pete Rose was not a player there at that time. But I heard this story that happened apparently at the paper that I worked at previously to me being there. And there's a little bit of a naughty word coming up in here, but that's okay. So someone who worked at the paper did an interview with Pete Rose. He was in town for something. And the paper quoted him as saying, "I am the best damn bastard baseball has." And this was at the time with, right, the being banned from the Hall of Fame and all the gambling stuff. And he was trying to get back into baseball. And the idea that Pete Rose would say, "I'm the best damn bastard baseball has," that sounds like something he would say, right?
Absolutely.
And then they had to run a correction the next day because what he actually said was, "I'm the best ambassador baseball has." And the writer just heard him wrong. And if you think to yourself, did Pete Rose just say damn bastard or ambassador? I understand where you would come down on the other side of that one.
Did they have to run a correction because Pete Rose called up the paper and said, like, that's not what I said? Or did somebody listen to the recordings and tell the reporter that he had heard it wrong?
He must have called. I'm surprised he called. I'm surprised he wasn't like, actually, that's better. I prefer
it's
that.
Cooler, right? It's a cooler thing to say. Yeah.
So and my other story, they always would tell. I was like 24 when I started covering sports in Philadelphia, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I just would hear all these stories from people. The other story that I always heard was that I think somebody from our paper at the time, or somebody like back in the day, they were covering a Philadelphia Flyers game, and there was a tornado, and the roof blew off the Spectrum. And the reporter called the office and said, "No game, the roof blew off," and went home. And did not write a story about the roof blowing off. And it's like,
he was there to cover a game and only a game. He's not a tornado reporter.
I want to cover sports like that. So I like the phrase "no game, the roof blew off," just like passes, and best ambassador passes through my mind from time to time. All right, what you been eating, Landis?
I've been eating. There's a place here in Columbus called Emmett's Cafe, and apparently its breakfast burrito is somewhat world renowned. Like the New York Times did a story on it. I was unaware of this before I sampled it. It's awesome. It's got like tater tots in it and eggs and cheese, like you expect from a breakfast burrito. The thing that really sets it off, though, is there's crispy prosciutto in there. I don't know if you're a prosciutto guy or not. You like salty meats. That's what's in this breakfast burrito. Crispy prosciutto and then a chipotle aioli that brings a really nice flavor to it. It is the second best breakfast burrito I've ever had, and it can be. The first one was found in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The second one was found in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it a given that a breakfast burrito in your mind has tater tots in it? Because I always think tater tots are the elevator of the breakfast burrito, and I don't assume them to be there. Do you assume them to be there?
I do not. Nope. The one that I had in New Mexico didn't have. I don't think it had potatoes of any kind in it, actually.
Okay. I think they're very like it makes it next level in my mind.
Yeah.
Because I think the best breakfast burrito I've ever had was at the Rose Bowl in 2018. They had a food truck on Media Day. And on that day, we interviewed Tate Martell, and then I ate a breakfast burrito. And I thought, this is the pinnacle of sports writing. What else do I want? Tate Martell and a breakfast burrito was as good as it got. But that might have been the first one I ever had that had tater tots in it. So
Yeah.
I'll make a breakfast burrito at home every now and then, but I never have tater tots. I always think to myself, why did I get tater tots? Because it makes it next level. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Look at you in the New York Times.
You should check this place out.
It'd be my kind of thing. I like that.
Yeah.
Speaking of things you eat out in the world, so I can very specifically remember, except I can't remember when it was. The first time I ever had like a make your own pizza at a make your own pizza place was in the Mall of America when I was covering an Ohio State football game in Minneapolis. So I looked at what games I would have covered there. And so it was either in 2021 or 2014. And it doesn't make sense to me that it would have been in 2021 because that's too recent, I think. I think Make Your Own Pizza has been around longer than that, right? Must it have been 2014?
In 2014, we were at the Mall of America.
Yeah.
And you and Ari went to a Make Your Own Pizza place.
Okay.
And I was on a diet at the time that like I wasn't eating real food. It was the worst. It was the worst night of my life. We also saw Dumb and Dumber 2 that night, which made it even worse.
So it was in 2014 because that was the first time I ever had it, and I was like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
The Mall of America. And then within a year, Make Your Own Pizza places were everywhere, right?
Yes.
And we talk about that. I don't think I talked about this on the show before, but like in our town, we had 4. We had 4 within 3 miles of my house, and now there are none.
I was thinking about this the other day because I used to go to the Pizza Cucinova all the time near campus.
Yes.
It's not there anymore. It's like a nail salon.
Yeah. They ate each other. There was a Mod Pizza, there was a Blaze Pizza nearby, and they all ate each other. And I hate when that happens. It was hot and cool and new, and then it got saturated, and then they all died, and now there's none. Mm-hmm. And now I have to go way out of my way, and I don't know how many there are. I mean, there's certainly some out in the world, but they're not as prevalent as they once were. And the restaurant business is so hard. But it's like everybody does it, then nobody does it. And now I'm waiting for somebody to come back with one because isn't Make Your Own personal pizza with all the toppings you want and everything? Like that's still a great business, isn't it?
I think so. I wonder how many, like, I would imagine maybe a bunch of them didn't survive restaurants closing during COVID, probably, right?
That was definitely part of it. But it was also like maybe don't build 4 the same thing within a mile radius of each other. So anyway, I miss it. Okay, so it was 2014.
Yeah.
I didn't remember your diet.
I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
And did that change your view on the world? It's like, let's just be happy.
The diet did not last much longer beyond that day. I guess I'll say that.
Wow. I'm glad that Ari and I could. That is also like the least surprise. Like Ari and I are just like blah 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 blah. Yeah. Like, look at you trying to be healthy. Ha ha. What are you watching?
So I'm listening.
You're listening.
I have learned something about myself in my 35th year here on the planet, and that is if you are a band that has like 80s style synths in your music and also works in a nice saxophone solo, I'm gonna be into it. And I discovered randomly the other day, I was just doing some work listening to music, and I let like Spotify just start playing stuff randomly. And it started playing songs from this band called The Strike. And it's like they just like took a band from 1984 and plopped it in 2024 in terms of the sound. But then like the guy's an incredible lead singer. Like they're a very tight band. Like it sounds awesome. I actually think you'd really like it. But based off what I know a little bit about your musical tastes. But then I also found out in doing a little more digging on them, they're of the North. They're from Provo. So they're probably super jacked up about the Cougars being undefeated too.
I mean, like so here's the thing. I really want a component eventually of Kings of the North to be us trying to get famous people who like our teams to come on the show and then tracking like who's the most famous person we had who's a fan of your team. If you want to start with The Strike talking the Cougs, let's go.
Maybe I'll reach out. I don't know. They don't have like insane numbers on Spotify, but they got some songs in the millions, I think. So they're fairly popular. But I never heard of them until like maybe yesterday. It was either yesterday or 2 days ago. I first heard them, and like it's all I've been listening to since then. But I do think there's like a trend, I think, in pop music a little bit that is going back towards some of the sounds of the 80s, I think. Like, are your daughters fans of the 1975 at all?
That's a band?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay. I thought maybe they wouldn't be because the lead singer is kind of a piece, but their sound, I think, has opened doors for a lot of other bands who sound that way, and this is one of those bands.
Oh, I love that 80s sound. I mean, it's banger, right? I mean, it's one of those things. Everybody likes like old music, but some old music stinks. And some old music is awesome. And I think old music from the 80s is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm down. So my watching is just, I finished Kevin Can F Himself. It's a tight 2 seasons. It's done. It's on Netflix. and it was very satisfying. So I officially endorse and recommend it to anybody who thinks a show that is half King of Queens, half Breaking Bad, and is filmed in the two very distinct styles and plays off all the cliches of those two styles while making just a very interesting and entertaining television show with an actual plot that actually like does have an end. I highly recommend it. And I will say this, like, do you find, I imagine people find this in relationships. I'm always looking for a thing. There are things that my wife and I watch together. There are things that my wife and I and our daughter, who's still in the house, watch together. And then there are things that I want to have something that only I'm watching. So if I'm taking a break between shows and eating lunch, I can pop something on for 20 minutes and not be like, hey, you watch that without me. So I found that show and did that as my own. Do you try to do that? Do you have like a Bill show and a family show that you've got to have kind of your own thing for when you're just sitting around doing nothing, right?
Yeah, I definitely do that. Our family stuff is just watching The Wiggles with our almost 2-year-old. But yeah, my wife and I watch some things together too. We're pretty. I think British Bake Off is coming back, so we're pretty pumped about that. We usually watch that together. But no, I definitely have stuff that I like. I just finished Fallout. Like, she didn't watch that with me because she doesn't want to watch a show about radioactive bugs, but I do.
Yeah. Well, that's just one of the ways that you're different. Okay. What are you thinking about?
Actually, I was thinking about this. I'm pretty juiced up that the baseball playoffs are back. We started talking about Pete Rose. I think baseball playoffs are second to the Stanley Cup playoffs in terms of like most entertaining, most exciting, most kind of drama filled. I actually don't find the NFL playoffs all that appealing. Like, I'll watch them when I watch Super Bowl, but I don't think it's like as engaging as hockey or baseball can be. Well, I'm actually curious to see how the college football playoff holds people now that it's expanded and not just the 4 games. But I love the baseball playoffs. And because it's too long of a season. I don't really check in with it till the postseason starts. So
yeah,
I'm happy that it's back. I'm excited that the Phillies are in it. I was excited that the Braves lost. I didn't see whether or not the Mets won or lost, but at least the Braves lost, so that was good.
I think the Mets won.
Yeah, I think they might have won too. So anyway, it's just fun. I think it's like, even for people who don't watch baseball all year, I think it's worth checking in on the baseball playoffs because I find them to be pretty exciting.
And 3 teams from the NL East, so you have 1 team to root for in the Phils and 2 others to root against, as you just said.
That's exactly right.
Fun. Yeah. I will not watch a single pitch of the baseball playoffs. I've talked about it before, and people don't need me to keep talking about it. It's just amazing to me. It was 1,000% my favorite sport when I was growing up. It was a sport that I covered every day for 4 years, and I literally have not watched a pitch the whole year, and I will not. So it's odd to me. But like, I'm okay with it, but it's like, it might be the single way that I am who I am. I don't know that anybody is surprised by that. This is kind of what I was out of the womb. The number one way that I have changed is that I used to love baseball, and I don't care about it at all anymore. And it's just kind of weird. And it's like the whole attention span thing, whatever, but it's not like I don't watch MMA. I don't watch slap fight stuff. Like, I don't watch sort of like the new version of sports. I just don't watch baseball. So it's weird. I'm thinking about fries. And I've had this one locked and loaded for a couple weeks, and then something happened and I solved my own problem. So the thing that I was thinking about is takeout fries. A lot of the time for me, because usually where I'm getting takeout fries is when I order wings and then I get fries on the side. And more often than not, when you get them, they have been in a styrofoam container and they have steamed themselves and they are soggy. Have you experienced this?
Yes, very much.
And I wanted to come on Kings of the North and ask our best scientists to solve this problem for America, because takeout fries should be crispy. Takeout fries do not, because we just know what's happening. They're fine when they come out. They get in the styrofoam, the heat gets trapped, and they sogify. And then I went to another wing place, and I had the crispiest, wonderful waffle fries in my home as takeout. And this is why. Mike, I sent Mike a photo. This is the greatest invention of our time. It is a cardboard box with 2 holes in the top. and it allows the heat to escape. And so these fries do not get soggy. So now I am not asking for a solution. I am asking for all wing places and takeout places around the country that have fries to get rid of their styrofoam, because actually it's better for the environment anyway. Get rid of the styrofoam and adopt these cardboard boxes with holes in the top. Landis, this is why people become scientists, to solve problems like this.
I was going to ask if they come in a box.
Oh. I never thought of it. But not just a box with holes.
Yeah, a ventilated box. Not enough places do it. When I was a kid, we used to order takeout all the time from the same pizza place. And granted, it was like, we probably should have just went there and got it ourselves. It was that close to our house, but they would just put the fries in a bag and like they stayed fresh because they weren't.
Oh, that's good too.
They weren't steaming on themselves in a styrofoam container. But no, I think you're right. That is French fries. It doesn't sync up right. So, well, how was this place closer to your house by any chance than the other place you normally get it from?
No,
I'm wondering about time. I'm wondering about time from restaurant to table.
Yeah, it really is the same distance, but it's almost to the point where they don't have my favorite wings. But the other night I was going to get them. I was almost going to get wings at the place I like and then get fries from them. And then I was just like, no, I don't want to go two places, and I'm just going to go to them and get their wings because their wings are good enough. Mm. And their fries are so much better. The fries and the soggy fries in the styrofoam container are almost inedible.
I think I agree. What's this new place? You want to shout them out?
It's called Oxby's. OX-B. Yeah. So it's a little bit, there's multiple of them. So just shout out. So, and again, like it might sound obvious, like you're like ventilated box. It's like, oh, now I feel like an idiot because ventilated box. But there's a lot of places that aren't doing it. They either haven't heard of a ventilated box or they have too much styrofoam already bought or whatever. So let's spread the word, Landis. Ventilated box.
Yeah, I had just been fortunate enough to have experienced that, but I wouldn't assume that everybody else has. So I think we need to get the word out there.
Ventilated box also kind of sounds like the name of an 80s band. Right? Oh man, Strike, the 1975 and Ventilated Box. How about that? Love those guys. Synth. A lot of synth and Ventilated Box. All right, that's going to do it for this version of Kings of the North. On Thursday, Donovan Ezeraku, the nation's sack leader, will join us, and we will make our picks, including a big game breakdown on Ohio State and Iowa. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Mike Yorostowski, for making us look good and sound good. Thanks to Mike Katic for joining us. Thanks to Taylor Lehman for joining us. Thanks to you guys for being part of what we're doing here on Kings of the North. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.